Can I therefore introduce Sally Tennant, our first speaker of the day? She's the CEO of Kleinwort Benson. Before that, she was chief executive of Lombard Odier UK, where what she did was to reposition and build the bank's UK private banking business. And before that, she spent 4 years as chief executive of Schroders Private Banking and was a member of the group's management committee. Before that, she worked for Gartmore, and she headed the global institutional division there, and she was a director on the main board. And she went on to found Beaumont Capital Management. This is an absolute return boutique, and that was purchased by Schroders in 2001. Outside her working life, she's a trustee and co-chair of Tommy's the Baby charity and a trustee of the Stars Foundation, and she has a degree in politics from Durham University. I'm particularly pleased that Sally's here today because, unfortunately, she wasn't able to come last year. So, Sally, over to you, if I may. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. In 2011, I had the privilege of speaking at the London Business School Women's Forum. And at the time, I didn't anticipate that I'd be invited back and that I would revisit the very important topic of shoes. This time last year, I was wearing these great boots. I was in Switzerland. Fabulous, fabulous, sunny time, glorious snow, really, truly beautiful. And in my head, I was thinking about the speech that I was going to make, which was all about inspiration, the theme that the London Business School chose last year. And suddenly, dark clouds came over the sky, the visibility darkened, and I caught an edge. That was me. I had the most monumental crash. And as one does, and most of us women do, I picked myself up, got up, and thought, oh, bad bruise. I was with my guide, because I actually do quite a lot of skiing. And we got on the ski lift, and it was one of those really old-fashioned sort of T-bar ski lifts. And as I was going on the ski lift, I started to sort of shake. I thought, oh, I really don't feel great. And then I became totally paralyzed from the waist down. And as I got off the lift, I fainted. Half an hour later, I was in the hospital, and the doctor looked at me, and he said, the good news is it's a clean break. The bad news is you've broken your pelvis, you're flat on your back for 2 months. Change. How about that? So what did I do? Well, 5 days later, I was airlifted back to the UK, lovely male nurse, the day I was due to speak here. And I was vacuum packed in this marvelous stretcher so that I wouldn't, as I went down the mountain, I'd be quite safe. And lots and lots of morphine, which was great. So I was thinking, okay, I can cope, I'm sure I can cope. And I got home, and I had a call from my chairman who said, you know, we've got a board meeting on Monday. I said, oh, yes, so we do. It's remuneration. Could I delegate discussing remuneration with any of my colleagues and deciding on what we should do within the bank? No, I couldn't. So we decided to change my bedroom into the boardroom. And in fact, ooh, what have I done there? I could have written a book about the next 2 months. And in fact, on the Monday morning, I was lying in bed, because flat on your back is what you have to be with a broken pelvis. I had my head of HR, another director around a table, and other directors ringing in. And the only tricky bit was when they had to discuss my remuneration, because I couldn't move. So they had to all leave the room and do that without me. So my view about change and leadership, it's about adaptation. And what I'd like to do now is to share with you my experiences of how to best adapt. And in my perspective, the most important thing is to have a winner's mindset. And for me, I'd like to talk to you about the ingredients of that winner's mindset. And it starts with the first thing that you learn at London Business School, and that is about having a strategy. when I joined Kleinwort Benson 2 years ago, the first 6 weeks, I was looking around the business. You know, a wonderful bank, been in existence for 200 years, but in fact, it had been rather neglected under its previous owners. And this is what I presented to the board. I said, look, Kleinwort Benson has got this great brand. It's like a Jaguar, fabulous global brand that's loved. But actually, if you lift up the bonnet, there are quite a few rusty parts. If you look around the shop floor, working practices were somewhat outdated, more British Leyland than BMW, very costly to manufacture, and people loved the brand, but not enough people bought it. And this is what I wanted to deliver. This is Jaguar under new ownership, under Tata. Very profitable business, cool car, people love it. So in order to really be able to cope with change, you need to know which direction you're going in. So that in order to produce a car like this one, when stuff happens around you, you can adapt and know that you can still stay on course. So when I shared this vision, and in fact was talking to my top team about how we're going to produce this car and what kind of strategy did we need to get to producing a car like that, we had this massive debate. And various people said to me, what do you think? Do you think we can get there? I said, well, there's one big problem in the bank. As I looked round, there were 10 men in the room, only 2 other women. And I said, this place is like a comfortable pair of old slippers. And how many of you guys have ever put on platform shoes? And they looked at me and thought, oh my God, she's lost it completely. And in fact, I tripped down like that and I said, look, when you first put on a pair of platform shoes, they're bloody uncomfortable. And guess what you do? You trip over, but you need to pick yourself up. Lesson number 2, a winner's mindset is about being in your discomfort zone. It's about putting on your pair of platforms and not your comfortable pairs of slippers. It's about being able to fall over and pick yourself up. I learned a very valuable lesson early in my career when I was working at Morgan Gropeful, a great British merchant bank, no longer in existence, part of Deutsche Bank. And at the time, I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and I thought I was doing really, really well. And promotions were due, and I thought it was a dead cert that I would get head of the European desk at Morgan Gropeful. My performance was great, and I didn't get it. And I was completely shocked, completely stunned. I thought, God, I can't run to the loo and cry. So I rang up one of my best friends, one of the most amazing entrepreneurs. I said, Robert, I've got to see you immediately. I've got a crisis. And he said, oh, I'll see you in this East End pub. Sawdust on the ground. I went running down, sat down, burst into tears, and told him how horrible British banks were. All these ghastly men had conspired against me and I hadn't got a promotion. And instead of being sympathetic, he just looked at me and said, your problem is you don't have enough drop-dead money. I went, what the hell's drop-dead money? And he said, Sally, what you need is enough money and enough confidence when stuff like that happens to turn around and say, drop dead, I'm out of here. And in fact, it was really important because 10 years later, when I was running the international business of Gartmore, and we were taken over by a US company who, in my opinion, thought the world began and ended on the golf course in Columbus, Ohio, and they wanted me to global head of this and that, I actually thought, no, I'm not going to do it. It's not right. I don't think that they see the world in the right way. And I had this great opportunity, which Andrew mentioned, to set up an absolute return boutique. And I could do so because, in fact, having a winner's mindset is always to have enough in reserve, enough to be able to say, right, I'll get out there and set up my own business. Networking. Going back to what that promotion that I didn't get at Morgan Grenfell. In fact, they were quite right not to give me that promotion, because technically I was very good, but I didn't make friends with my colleagues. I competed with them. I didn't network correctly. And I learned that. It was a really, really great lesson. And one of the things that I think is really important to manage change and to have a winner's mindset is to network with the idea of making somebody else successful, not about yourself. If you network and you go out and you help people, it will come back in spades. And I can give you an example. I was in Switzerland last week and won a fantastic piece of business, which really came my way because 5 years prior to that, I went out of my way to help somebody out of a big mess they got into, somebody who was important. So think about networking in terms of helping others, both in the office and out of the office. Next, a winner's mindset is all about always being fit for purpose. Fit for purpose, Linda, who's going to speak later, I can't see if she's here, in her book, The Shift, talks about having mastery of a competency. And that is really, really important. If in your sphere of expertise, you can always be top of your game, always be out there, always understand what's going on, you can be the go-to person or one of the go-to people in your field. You will always be able to see what's happening in terms of change. And one of the things that I've always done in order to remain fit for purpose, other than skiing, is actually to have very, very bright younger people, because they keep you on your toes. The other thing that is pretty important in terms of a winner's mindset is to ask yourself constantly, where is the smart money? What is happening in my industry? So in the 90s, when I was at Gartmore, the smartest and brightest of my peer group were leaving merchant banks, were leaving the big banks, and they were setting up hedge funds. And I thought, well, I better find out about these hedge funds. I'm in the asset management business. I've run a large team. But actually, I went out of my way to educate myself as to where the smart money was going. And it was going into hedge funds, which meant that Gartmore, which had been a rather traditional, long-only asset management business, I came back with that expertise and was able to build a fabulous absolute return and hedge fund business for Gartmore. So asking where the smart money is part of having a winner's mindset. The other is not just asking or looking, but it's also asking the right questions. I remember being very privileged in the early 90s. The Harvard Business School runs a program for people in the asset management business, and it's by invitation only. And I went, and for some odd reason, they run it in Princeton. Anyway, off I went, and I was surrounded by 120 of the bright and the best in the asset management business, and we were divided into groups. And we got one really, really challenging case study, a derivatives case study, that I knew I didn't really understand. And I worked my way through it. And when we were in our little group, there was an incredibly bright guy, physicist. He'd worked at NASA. And he said, oh, we don't need to spend any time on this at all. It's so easy. And I just said, sorry, could you just talk me through it then if it's so easy? Because I'm not sure I understand it. So we went through it, and I thought, interesting. And then when we got to the professor going through the case study, we were all 100% wrong, including him. And actually not being fearful of asking questions and looking at things differently is incredibly important. Think about Einstein, one of the brightest and the best. What he said was you can't solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. So always in your field, keep asking the questions, keep talking to people so that you can actually start anticipating the change. So, in summary, as far as I'm concerned, coping with change is about having a winner's mindset. It's about having that strategy and knowing where you're going. It's about being comfortable in your discomfort zone, putting on those platform shoes. It's about making sure you've got some drop-dead money so you can walk away from a situation where they're not working well with change. It's about networking to make others successful and staying fit for purpose, always being ahead of the game. And checking where the smart money is. Because the smart money, it's where the future is. The future will already be here if you're out there and looking for it. I was asked to say a few words about change from a personal perspective, from the home life. So yes, I am a wife, I'm a mother, and I'm a daughter. So how do I cope with all of those things? The advice I would give you is around managing your state, managing your head in terms of those roles. It's not easy, but it can be done. So one of the things that I committed to with my husband was always to have a week's holiday plus 1 weekend a year with him alone. No children, no friends. And that's always been very important, to keep one's balance. Secondly, I don't have the BlackBerry on, I don't have my iPhone on when we have dinner at night. So we have conversation, we have time together. And I don't actually, or we don't actually watch much television during the week, because we've had a busy day, and actually it's so comfortable and easy when you're tired to watch telly. It's not brilliant for your relationship. So that's how I cope as a wife. As a mother, I've always had the philosophy to make sure that you've got a network of support, not just paid help, but support around friends at work, as well as at home. So this is my daughter when she was 2.5 years old, and yes, I did leave work, and I did go and see her first ballet class. And guess what? This was 2 weeks ago at 3 in the afternoon. 2 weeks ago, she was performing. She's just graduated as a dancer from the Central School of Ballet. My second daughter, who's still a teenager, keeps me very, very grounded, because she's the one that rolls her eyes up and does like this to me when she says, "Mummy, you're in the office." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "I can't bear that word teamwork when it's unloading the dishwasher." It's true. So, you know, I don't always get it right. Nobody does. But children are fantastic. They're the most honest people at giving you feedback. So when you think everything's fine, they're the ones that keep you grounded. So it's not easy. Juggling with the different roles that we have in life and the different responsibilities. But for people who moan and groan about it, I kind of say get over it and think of Ginger Rogers. Ginger Rogers, somebody was talking to her and said, "Wasn't it terrific for you, Fred Astaire, being able to dance with him?" And she said, "Don't forget, I did exactly the same steps, but I had to do them backwards and in heels." Thank you.
Quite used to it. These are made for speaking.
No, not yet, not yet.
Yeah. For questions, and I think I have.
Yeah, we have some room for questions, so would anyone like to start? Hello, my name's Claire Marie Boggiano, and I've come down from Manchester today, so I'm delighted to be here. Sally, thank you very much for your talk. It was inspirational, and I'm now in my 40s, and I'm actively looking for role models, and I think I found one today, so I'm delighted to hear you. But do you look for role models, and if you do, who are they?
Role models. Yes, my first role model was a fantastic lady whom, in fact, I saw last 2 days ago. She was a woman called Carol Galley. She was my first mentor when I worked at Warburg's. And she had it even sort of tougher in a way, in that she didn't even manage to get in. When I started my career, I was the first female graduate trainee at a merchant bank called S.G. Warburg, and she'd had to sort of come in through the library, etc., so she'd really had it tough. And in terms of role models, I look, and I've sought people out who are sort of more mentors than role models, of people who stay true to themselves and cope with things, and that you can go and talk to, and aren't the kind of scary Miss Pluperfect that you think, God, I could never be like that. And people in particular who have coped with career changes and changing direction in particular. One of my role models is somebody who ran a hedge fund and now runs the most fantastic charity for abused women. So role models are people who are prepared to give you a bit of time, who through themselves have done fascinating things.
Hi, Sally. I've come a little further from Manchester. I've come from Dubai. I guess I just wanted to ask how you actually get to that point where you're always fit for purpose, having mastery of competence. In today's world, you're trying to do 101 things. You've just talked about being a manager, a mother, a daughter, a wife. How do you find time outside the day-to-day operation, the day-to-day running of a business to actually do that?
Okay, so I would say I do three things. First of all, one is being a very good delegator and organising yourself in such a way that stuff that you know and can do easily, you make sure other people in your top team do, and you focus in the areas of where your expertise is to make sure you don't fall behind. So I'd say one is around delegation. The other is about time management. So making sure that you carve out time in your week to just focus on the industry. And you can sometimes do that. It's not necessarily by reading, but it's by going out there and meeting people. And the third thing that I've done throughout my career is I don't do many speaking engagements overall. But one of the things that I used to do was to always accept an engagement in an area of expertise that I wanted to know more about, because I knew that if I had to talk about it, I'd have to learn about it because I couldn't wing it. So I kept my expertise up. I talked about tail risk in hedge funds once, just when I entered that industry. So that, for me, was a way of being able to keep fit for purpose. And again, if, as I said, hiring really bright, new generation people around you, because if they're inquisitive, they'll come back to you and say, so what do you think of this? And, that stretches yourself. And in a funny way, doing the non-exec directorships that I do are in the not-for-profit sector. And in a way, I found that as a chief executive, actually chairing a charity where the chief executive reports to you is actually quite a good way of playing the other side of the role and keeping one fresh as a chief executive.
Hello, Sally. My name is Katya Kachan, and I'm working as well in investment banking in London. And, well, my question will be a bit straightforward. Taking into consideration the current changes of the industry, where will the smart money go?
That's a massive question. Do you mean in investment terms? You know, where are people investing right now, or what the new?
Exactly. And what is the future role of London as the financial center, the world financial center?
Okay, right. Well, let's start with London's role as a financial hub and a financial centre. It is one of, if not the preeminent financial centre in the world due to a number of factors, but one is language, one is time zone, and one is a history of not just financial services expertise or banking expertise, but actually all the auxiliary services that come with that, the legal, the PR, all of those areas. There's massive expertise in London. I guess behind your question is, with the euro and whether the UK is in Europe or not, how will that impact London? It's clearly better for London if we're still within Europe. I mean, London hasn't actually lost out from not being part of the euro. I would hope very much that British politicians bear that in mind if they were thinking with regards to an exit from London. You know, should there be a referendum, or when the referendum comes in the UK and we decide to go out of Europe, overall, my assessment is it's not brilliant for London, but it won't disappear altogether. There's too much expertise. In terms of the first part of your question, as to where the smart money is going in terms of investment banking, I think the smart money is going to businesses that don't have conflicts of interest. I think the biggest challenge financial services face right now is the fact that people have lost trust and confidence in many of the banks. Many of the large banks who've, if you read the papers and you know from being in the industry, have actually put themselves and their P&L forward rather than that of their clients. And so you've seen quite a lot of corporate advisory and investment banking boutiques who don't run capital books, and they being set up and doing quite well. You've also seen in more boutiques being set up in the asset management and private wealth management business, again, for that same very reason. Does that answer your question? Good. Any other questions? Yeah. Sorry, there are two there.
Hi, Shella Lockhab in the Sloan Programme at London Business School. I only know of one other woman who broke her pelvis skiing. I understand it's probably the strongest bone in the body. And you're here 1 year on, looking very fit. How important is goal setting to you?
I didn't want to tempt fate, but yesterday I was actually skiing. But I didn't want to take a picture and put it on there just in case I actually skied over where I'd had my accident last year. So how important is goal setting? It's very important. It goes back to the point I made around having a strategy. So if your question is around your own personal goals, I think that you can't in life, in my view, you'll find it much harder to achieve stuff unless you've got a goal, unless you might get there in a different direction. The goalpost might change. But frankly, I wouldn't be standing here today if I hadn't, in my 20s, thought, you know, when I grow up, I'm actually, instead of analysing businesses as an analyst that I was and investing in them, I'm going to run one. You know, I don't think it would have happened. Yeah, in terms of goals of skiing, I guess it's that thing that you fall off a horse, and I think you're meant to get back on. But it so happened But I was actually born and brought up in Switzerland, so I've skied since the age of 3. So I just couldn't conceive of not skiing. And yeah, I just finished skiing at lunchtime yesterday, exactly where I was. Yeah?
So when you grow up, what are the goals going to be like for now?
Oh, my goodness. Well, that is so kind. I'm 57 years old. It's lovely to think that somebody's saying to me, when do I grow up? Goodness me. I don't know in the sense of, I've toyed with, do I want to go plural? Do I want to sit on boards of various companies? But I like getting my hands dirty. I like putting on my platform shoes and building and making things. Whether in 10 years' time I'll be doing it with in the same industry, I've no idea. But I enjoy, and I'm sure I'll sort of become chairman or something, but I love seeing businesses grow. I like working with people and seeing them flourish, you know, boys and girls. You know, I'm sort of gender neutral about that. So I think you had a question, yeah.
Hi, my name is Maria Vanegas. I'm also in the investment banking industry.
Bad luck.
You mentioned you mentioned something actually that I totally agree with, which is you used to not network with your colleagues. You used to compete with your colleagues, which I also agree that is totally wrong. But then I always ask myself a question is, when do you stop actually networking and being a friend? Because you also need to get ahead and look out for yourself.
Networking to make other people successful doesn't mean you're not networking for yourself either. The reality is making other people successful is the best way to make yourself successful, because other people want you to succeed. It's very, very simple. And that's both colleagues, it's with competitors, it's with clients. I mean, I had a client last year who came to me who wanted to buy a bigger stake in his business and wanted us to lend him some money. And actually we stood back and said, do you know what? It'd be great for us. We'd love to lend you the money. We'd make lots of money out of it, but it's the wrong thing for you. There's a much smarter way in which you can do this. And gave him the advice, which he came to see me about a month ago just to say thank you. We saved him a hell of a lot of money. Now, he's increased his stake in that business without having to borrow the money. I know that one day when he liquidates his business, who's the first bank he's going to come to talk to? It'll be us. And it was the right decision. So I just don't think it's as black and white as that. Of course you have to look after yourself, but not to the detriment of others, in my view. Yeah.
Hi there. My name's Jo. I'm actually, thank you. I'm here with Arla Foods dairy industry. So there we go. Think cows, think Lurpak, think Anchor. So in terms of this word adaptability, it's a word that we're using a lot in businesses now. It forms very much part of the leadership story. And to try and articulate that for people becomes quite tricky because it's quite dependent on how individuals interpret that. So I'd quite like a live example of being adaptable in your world, please, if you can help define that a bit more.
Running a business from my bed flat out without being able to sit up. The adaptability, I mean, it's a slightly flippant reply to you, but it's the mental agility to be able to, like that quote from Einstein, to look at things not in the same mindset as before. If you're frightened of change and you're not used to adapting, you'll find it very hard to move with the times. That's what happens to businesses. They don't keep rocking the boat. So adaptability is flexibility of thinking, it's flexibility, but it's around a central goal. And it's evolutionary as opposed to a whole change. I mean, 75% of change management programs don't succeed. So that tells you about the fear of change and how hard it is. Whereas if you're adapting to a situation and navigating around it, I think it's a hell of a lot easier. But I don't have a perfect, I mean, you can use, if you like, you know, to be adaptable is about having that sort of winner's mindset that I talked about. It's about always asking questions and being prepared to realize that you're wrong and actually not understand something. It's the most powerful thing, I think, of any executive is to be able to sit in a meeting and go, I have no idea what you're talking about, talk me through it. It's not, you know, when I started my career, I thought that was a really weak thing to do, but it's not. Yeah.
Thank you. Hello, it's Jane Adsted Grant. Sally, thanks again for a fabulous speech this morning. What for you are your greatest challenges that you face right now?
The biggest business challenges that I face right now is re-engineering and turning around a bank in a banking crisis is not a bunch of laughs. The biggest challenge that I have is time. Because I'm in an industry where there are no quick wins. You can't just turn on the tap. It's not a trading business. And I'm a great believer in investing in putting in the key building blocks in the business and really thinking about getting the right people on the bus, as in good to great. I don't know if you've read that, but and that takes time to find the right people. So it's taken me, my top team now, I've been there 2 years and 1 month, I've got 80% change in my top team. Now, to find those people has taken me virtually 2 years. And so that's a massive challenge. The next challenge is making that team really gel and work together and sing off the same hymn sheet, which is tough when a business and an industry is going through a difficult time. And managing those stakeholders, shareholders, my parent company, that's not easy.
Hi, Tina Kumar. I've got a question for you, going back to something you were talking about earlier, which was collaborating and helping people in terms of your networking. What happens when you're working in a competitive workplace and you don't want to necessarily walk away because you feel you can impact the culture of a company? Can you elaborate on any situations that you may have gone through that kind of helped you do that, if at all?
So if I understand your question correctly, it's like if you're in an organization where you think you can impact and effect cultural change, but and you're saying it's quite difficult. How do you go about that, or have I been in that situation?
You were talking about colleagues and basically supporting them, and I've worked in situations where, possibly with the majority of men in the workspace, where a lot of them have been quite competitive, and actually you've got no choice but to play the game.
I think working collaboratively doesn't mean that you can't be competitive in the sense of doing, it's just the way you go about it. It's a degree of politics that's involved in it. I have been in situations where I've stuck it out and felt that you could work with the people and change the culture around it, but you need to have 1 or 2 other people around you to help you. If you don't have that, it's really, really tricky. And, you know, if you can't change the people, change the people. You just have to, if you're responsible, you've got to get away from what I call the 2 most damaging things. I've had, as Andrew explained when he introduced me, when I went into Schroders Private Bank in 2001, the company that I'd been running had been bought. Basically, I went down like a cough of cold sick. I mean, these guys had had 4 chief executives of their private bank in 5 years. I came in, like, what did I know about private banking? I came from the asset management business. And I really had to assess very, very quickly whether culturally I could get that organization into a new space. And in the end, I had to fire quite a number of what I call the team terrorists and the silent seethers, the ones who nod away in meetings, say yes, yes, and immediately go around to the coffee machine and undermine what's going on. And actually, it's too debilitating. It takes so much energy out of one, trying to get people on side, that you can only take it so far, and then you've got to bite the bullet. And coming back to the question I was asked about what the challenges are, if you're turning around a business or building a business, and you know you've got to make that decision, but there are a lot of clients who'll be unhappy, it's how you weigh that up and how you keep them on side, which is the important thing.
I think we have time just for one last question.
Hi, I have a question regarding your statement where you said that you were in your when you were young, you knew that you wanted to run somewhere. I'm from Trinidad, and I remember coming to London and meeting Jane Fonda and being, I think I was 25 at the time, and having a chat with her, and she said, we were chatting, and it's like, I don't know what I want to do in life, and she told me, well, how old are you? And like, I'm 25. She goes, if you don't know by now, it's too late. And
that's really helpful.
Yeah. I had just bought her autobiography as well, and she just signed it, and I just looked at her, and, I didn't know what to do, and I walked away. I never read her book, by the way, but anyway. But just to ask you a question, some people are fortunate enough in life to know quite early on what their end goal is. But what do you do for the person who doesn't know, or who toys with a few ideas, and you get to, I don't know, gasp after 35 and you still don't know? Do you have any advice?
Well, not many of us are blessed as my eldest daughter, who kind of always wanted to dance. She's very lucky from a young age, although had I really taken her seriously, I would have had a different educational career for her, because she was mainstream educated. A difficult one. It's like finding the right partner in life. There's no right age. But the difference is, in terms of your career, you've got to try something out, and if it's not what is satisfying and what you're good at, then you need to move on. And normally speaking, in my experience, people end up doing what they enjoy, and what they enjoy they're good at. And if you haven't found that, then you need to network with people in different careers and find out what's in that avenue, or seek help. Ask people as to what your skill set is suited to. I don't think, frankly, if you're age 35 and you still don't know, I think you've got a bit of a problem. That maybe, I'm not saying you, but one has, because at that stage, maybe somebody's sitting there expecting it to land on their lap, and it doesn't. You've got to go out and find it. You find your luck. And that's what happens. If you're out there looking, stuff happens, and it's good. Because I'm maybe not terribly helpful answer, but that's my view. Yeah.
I think that's all the time we have, unfortunately. So we'll give a round of applause for Sally, everyone.